Tenho a honra de estar aqui acompanhada de Christopher Andrews para a gente poder falar sobre o filme chamado Bring Them Down, que chega agora à MUBI. Então, vem junto com a gente.
I was trying to write something that I would be my first feature film, and everything was a little bit expensive. And I was in the north of England where we have fells, sort of our mountains, not huge but relatively big. And I was walking there thinking how beautiful it was, and how utilized it is as a landscape in cinema in Britain. And this shepherd walked out of the mist, like this sort of singular character out of a Western. And so he felt like this character that I could explore, and this landscape felt really rich. And at the time I was sort of really interested in taking Bible stories and just trying to play with them, invert them, and explore them about what they mean to us now, and how how we're brought up in a very Christian landscape. So even if you don't believe, even you don't go to church, and you still you're shaped by these stories, and how it shapes our culture. And then there was these new stories about people cutting the hind legs off sheep. And so I just kind of married those things together, this idea of the parable of the good shepherd, and as the shepherd goes up to save the lost soul, if someone comes and rustles his flock. I love those sort of 70s American revenge thrills, but they always seem to be uh, very much like there's a good guy or a bad guy, and there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And that's not what my understanding of being a human being is. I'm not a bad guy, but I'm not a good guy. I try to do the right thing, and I fail, and I make mistakes, and I try again. And I wanted to have that complexity. I wanted to make a revenge story that felt much more human, and spoke to an audience about revenge, about violence, about war, but questioned our own, responsibilities within that.
And when I was watching, I was started to think like, oh, it's a really man's world, indeed.
I mean, where I was brought up, it was, men don't speak very much, and they do things side by side. You know, you play football, you kind of like your team's on this side, and so you're always, if you go to the pub, stand at a bar and you're side by side. It's like nothing you do is like face on, and women always seem to, be able to sit face to face, and they may not talk about exactly what the problem is but they talk around things, and there's like a lyricism and a music to the way that they communicated, and it allowed them to be like to be more mindful, and let those problems out. As soon as you let a problem out into the world, it doesn't feel as big. It doesn't feel as much of a problem. And with the men, they were just pushing it down. They just pushed them down, and they just pushed them down. And there's only so much room you have until they need to get out. And where I come from was quite a poor part of the world, and but men, like, globally, are told that you're powerful and that you have agency and you can do anything you want, because you're a man. But it's not the truth, And it's like, and when you have no agency, but you're told that you're supposed to have agency, you feel like you're failing, and it's humiliating. And humiliation in men is I think across the board something that they respond badly to. And the way that, often in those situations when you don't have agency and you want to find rage and aggression is the easiest thing to reach for, because it's like I can control it because I'm strong, and from maybe for a fleeting moment you might feel like that until you realize that it gives you no agency. It doesn't control a situation. It's even more humiliating, and exacerbates the issues that you've got, that you're already suffering. So it was really interesting to explore that.
How this inability of dialogue, that translates into violence and affect us.
And the effect that has on on women, and certainly in this story, and in the place that they come from, where there is the opportunity now that they don't have to stay. They don't have to put themselves in this environment. You can be more mobile. There are more opportunities for work. There are more opportunities for education than it was from my mother's generation and the generations before that. It changed a lot. And I think Caroline's character is coming to that point of understanding, maybe a little bit late, but she's still coming to it. It's like a coming of age. Coming of age stories can happen when you're 8 or 80. It's when you have a realization that something needs to change, or you have a different
Yeah.
a
That
different
click.
yeah. And it doesn't come when you want it to. It comes when you like, and so
Yeah.
she's having that moment, but she's also recognizing that she is becoming infected by the way that they behave. She's acting out in a violent way. She's trying to get agency. She's trying to get her anger out and frustration, and she's seeing the effect that it's having on her, and the fact that it's having on her child, and so she, in a much more mindful way, is understanding that something needs to change from her. And instead of just perpetuating and doing the same thing, it's kind of the definition of insanity, is like doing something that doesn't work and then doing it again and then doing it. And these men are just repeating the same thing. It's like trying to you know, open a walnut with a sledgehammer. It's like, let's try again.
I wanted to talk to you about the sound. Ship scene, for example, we don't see anything, but we feel everything. And I think this is brilliant. So I wanted you to talk about how do you work with the sound in this movie, the silence and or when the sound was gonna to take the protagonism.
So it was a very delicate balance between the silence and the elements that we had and the score. And then when it came to the set to the sheep in the sort of in those sort of two brutal sequences where things are happening to the sheep, the sound designers struggled to find, they're not sounds that you can find, and nobody really knows what that might sound like. In reality, it might sound silent, which kind of counterpoints against the film was so silent. It needed to be. We needed. My
Sounders.
intention was
Yeah.
always not to show anything, but to make you feel it, because the way that people respond to sound is 48,000 frames a second as opposed to 24 on visual. And so I had to create those two sequences myself in the mix, and we couldn't find those sounds. So about 90% of the sheep sounds in those sequences are me on a sofa in Belgium with a microphone making sheep noises for 2 days. So yeah, so I actually found something that I was good at. So if writing and directing doesn't work out, then
And make ship
I
sound.
could-
The movie brings all these questions, that we are talking about the masculinity and the religion. So how do you expect that the public receive the movie?
is very personal. It's about neighbors but it has this kind of like global reach when you're talking about land, and you're talking about like people sharing land and wanting access through land, and what that means to the global conflicts that are happening at the moment. And we feel like we're in a position where there is a lot of war in the world, and it seems to be getting worse, not better. And I think it talks to that, and it talks to people as individuals about what our position is in that, and how we treat one another and how we behave. The decisions that we make for ourselves, you know it makes us question, I hope that it makes us think about what effect that has on other people. I think we're in a world where there's so many pressures on us that we make these decisions, and it's very easy not to think about what that what effect that might have on our neighbors or on our loved ones and our family and the communities that we live in. I think it's talking into that space and hopefully it makes people ever think about who they are and how they behave.
Thank you so much.